Welcome back, everyone, to our 3PL Summit. I am very excited today because if you are a fan of Great Quarter Gals, which, by the way, I think we might be bringing back, but if you are a fan, this is a nice little kind of extra episode that you could say we're including here in this 3PL Summit today. Of course, you're going to watch a number of wonderful interviews, chats, fireside chats with some excellent experts here in the industry, but we want to give you a chance to see this industry and how to work and scale in this industry through the lens of a female CEO. And I think we brought probably one of the best ones here with us today, Maggie Barnett from LVK. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love if you could introduce yourself to the audience and give them a little background in your time here in logistics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here. Longtime listener, first time interview, so this is exciting for me. I'm Maggie Barnett, CEO of LVK. LVK is wholly owned by ShipHero, which is a best-in-class WMS. And at LVK, we have 7 warehouses, 1 million square feet across North America, and we really only onboard 5 to 7 customers a year because we only take on very complex operationally and technical retailers, and we like to go real deep with them. So that's LVK in a nutshell.
I love that. Especially it means, right, that you get a chance to see all of these problems. You get to focus on that, direct your team directly towards those goals and get work done. And I think that's what we like to see out of logistics companies in this day and age. And I want to start with building LVK because it's a really interesting story of how LVK came to be. Can you tell us a little bit about LVK's growth and the lessons that you learned scaling the business?
Absolutely. So when I joined ShipHero 7 years ago, we were just a WMS, IMS, OMS. And we realized that it would be really interesting if we started a 4PL model. So we signed up a few customers. I was in charge of that. And we thought, okay, the 4PL model was very hip at the time because investors liked it, asset light, we didn't have to get our hands dirty that much, right? We quickly found out that it was much better to be in the warehouse. And this helped us for 2 reasons. One, it made our WMS so much better with us having to constantly use it in real time in larger spaces. And 2, it was a better customer experience. Like we had to be on the floor and not have those layers of customer service people just like handing problems off to one another and not really understanding the customer. So when we started it, it was kind of like, okay, we'll do a 4PL. And then we're like, wait, no, we need to own the warehouse experience. And then what happened was COVID. And it was intense because we had signed a lease out in Las Vegas to set up our own warehouse there. And we signed up some big clients and we were ready to go. I hired a GM. This was all over Zoom, FaceTiming through a 60,000 square foot warehouse. And I mean, which is just wild because you're like, sure, I guess that works. Like it's empty. And, I went out there because I was like, I do need to see this. And I went out, Grace, with my backpack. And that was it. So I was like, it'll be 3 days. It'll be easy. I was like one of 10 people on the plane. Fast forward 4 months later, have been living in Vegas the entire time to really get to know the business. I lived out of a hotel and I just got all my clothes at Target because I had literally only had a knapsack. So that was kind of the beginning of like my love for warehousing and also just really how we could make the best customer experience because we were on the ground using amazing technology, but we really had to understand how to leverage that technology to meet the needs of brands.
Totally. And I'd like to touch on that. What lessons did you learn that contributed to that technology, right? So you're there in Vegas, you're scaling this out. And I love kind of that boots on the ground experience, right? Which I think has probably helped get you to the success that you've gotten today. Can you tell us about maybe what you learned being boots on the ground that helped implement within your operations or technology as well?
It's a great question because there's so many things you're drinking from a fire hose. And the first thing I learned was that when stuff comes in directly from manufacturers, a lot of times it's wrong. It's barcoded wrong. It's not barcoded. It's not organized. So that receiving process, not to get like too in the weeds, but is so difficult. And that's also where we could see the 4PL model would constantly fall down with numerous merchants if they weren't very easy merchants, if it just wasn't one SKU. So seeing that receiving process in real life, because it's easy to sit 3,000 miles away and be like, why hasn't it been received yet? And it's like, you don't understand how it is to unload a floor-loaded container day after day after day. We have 6 floor-loaded containers coming in. Nothing's marked. All there is a BOL, and you don't know what is on the shipping plan. So really feeling like that detailed pain, you're like, wow, we need to make this better for the warehouse, for the customers. How can we empower the customers to tell us what's coming in accurately? And when it doesn't, what's the triage flow of that? Because we know in warehousing, it's all about exception management. It's not going to be perfect. So that was some of the things I learned, was just how to receive better. That's just the starting point. And then also carrier selection, how you work with carriers, how late you can get pickups. One of the best things that we came up with out of the technology with ShipHero is the ability to bulk ship multiple line items. Like, we used to only be able to bulk ship one item at a time, and that's suboptimal. So we got a lot of cool features out of it and real world experience.
So I believe that then there was a pivot that came, right, from all this experience as well. And really want to touch on this because I think I've experienced a little bit in my career in scaling businesses. The same thing I think a number of our listeners today are probably experiencing as well. Can you tell us about this interesting pivot that led you to the CEO role that you're in today?
Yes. So we started out as ShipHero Fulfillment, and it was great. We were growing. We were scaling through COVID. And people would get to our website at shiphero.com and they'd say, like, what are you guys, at WMS? You're scaling this fulfillment business rapidly. Like, what do you guys do? So there was a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And we knew that both businesses could stand alone. There's a best-in-class tech and best-in-class fulfillment services. So I spoke with Aaron, who I know a lot of people I'm sure who are listening to this know, who's the CEO and founder of ShipHero. And he said, Maggie, I think it needs its own brand. Like, fulfillment needs to stand on its own because it can. It's profitable. And also, like, just let it run. And it's a big change, Grace, because you wear the ShipHero badge for so long, and then you're like, wait, we have to come up with a new name. We have new swag. It's been an amazing being able to recreate fulfillment under this new title and really let it run on its own.
So going through that experience, and for the leaders watching today, any advice that you would give them in particular in recognizing that moment, right? Do you see that happening in businesses around you, and how do they make that bold shift? Is it just jump in and hope for the best, or is there any lessons that you learned from even the pivot that they should consider going through that change?
So what I've learned, like looking back on that time of making this decision, I think the number one thing we were doing was trying to listen. We can always think through things and overthink, but we're like listening to the people who hit our website, and we heard the same thing over and over again. It wasn't one person. It was the not being clear with our message at the ShipHero.com. So like, that's like, we have to listen to who we're selling to. And if you can't communicate your message and who you are as a company and what you do, it doesn't matter how great you are. No one will ever find you or even pick up the phone when you try to call because they just don't get it. So I think that's the number one thing, is like listening to that and then being able to say, hey, how can I communicate with my ideal customer profile? Because they live all different places. They understand things differently. So I think that would be my number one takeaway, is just listening. And when you go all in. Like when we did this, when we changed it, when we moved it over to LVK.com, it was full force. Like everyone had their swag. I think I showed you, our little mugs. Like everyone got sweatshirts. I mean, it's important to have the team buy in. And our team is amazing, from my VP GM, Scott Thomas, all the way through the organization. Like everyone wears this very proudly. And I'm proud of it. So I think that's the other thing is when you go, like, no half measures.
I love that, right? Listening to your customer, and also it sounds like a big part of this is almost listening to those who haven't become your customer and what's confusing them about your business model. And then on top of it, recognizing a really great opportunity, right? That's in front of you. And I love the last part because, Craig Fuller, we love him here. He's all about taking an idea and just running with it, right? And things will happen, problems will happen. I think it's probably my favorite thing I've learned here at FreightWaves is I've always been the patient kind of let's make sure everything works, and it's creatively great to just kind of push that drive. And you also get a really great team momentum behind that because I think as leaders, it showcases that you are confident in this idea, and then that can trickle down into everything. And I'm sure at the end of the day, your customers are seeing that outcome as well, right?
Totally. Totally. You nailed it. It's getting the team behind it. It's the listening. It's the all in. And I think to touch on something you said, like when you tell your friends what you do, Grace, is like, I work in logistics or supply chain. Like that is like, think about how many points that is. Like you could talk about something at the ports. So I'm sure too, like that messaging, just when you're even having dinner with like friends or family, if you can't explain it to them in a very specific way, we have to go back to the drawing board.
I'm still struggling to figure out how to explain that to even my parents of what I did. They just say she works with trucks, and I'm like, close.
I love that. I love that. That was like during COVID, my mom would look out. She's in California, and she said she'd look out at the water, and she's like, Maggie, I think I finally get it. I see the shipping containers, and they're all just backed up out there. Is that what you do? And I was like, sure. But it was great because that's when the supply chain became so much more mainstream. Like people actually wanted to talk about it.
Well, you know what? On that note, too, I think what's great about it becoming so mainstream is that it is, and a reason that we definitely have you here today is I think it's opening up an opportunity or allowing for more people to see the opportunities, women in particular, in supply chain. Can you tell us a little bit about your just experience as a woman in this industry and maybe advice for those watching today who are just like, God, it's tough around all these men. How do I feel more heard, and how do I become a leader at the same time?
It's a great question. And it's a difficult question to answer because everyone has their own journey, right? Like everyone is going to have maybe a male boss that helped them or didn't help them, or a female boss that helped them or didn't help them. So like, I think with me and LVK, all of a sudden I looked up and our head of people operations, Carol, came to me and she's like, Maggie, we have over 65% women on the team and many in leadership positions. And this is throughout the warehouse and everywhere across LVK. And I was like, that's fantastic. And it kind of just, it just happened in the sense of, I think being open-minded to everyone at the table, to always listening and always just being open to solution-oriented people. And it's just created a really good vibe. And I think it kind of happened organically. And at the same time, I know it's so important as a woman in business to always help other women in business. If anyone reaches out to me, I'm always happy to jump on a call. And I hope that would be vice versa. And I think it's really important. I think there's that old saying, like there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. So, but I think there's like that other point too of just like, as a woman, it's always about like investing in another woman, making the hire of another woman. Like that's kind of like I don't want to say like the proof is in the pudding, but like the fact that we got to 65% and we didn't even have any initiatives, I think is very cool. So yeah.
I totally agree. And I think a lot of times it's just about almost how you lead and leading with empathy. I think a lot of times is what helps these situations. And especially in the role that you've been in, like being in this like C-suite situation, remembering to like highlight those, right? Like I always would try to, if a good idea came up, like, not, I would never own it. I would make sure it's like this Danielle or someone, she came up with this and she's running with it and she's owning this project, and almost like speaking up on the behalf of those women around you. And I think you're right. When you do that, it does organically showcase. And I think to kind of even include it in the whole, like, just confidently pushing through with the strategy of LVK, it's like the same thing there. Just, I think probably you say organically, I'm sure it's a level of your confidence in the role that you're in, and just people seeing that around you, just say, you know what, I can do that too. And I think just people forget that sometimes. It's like, if I can just see someone in something I want to be in, that can be enough to like spark that drive. So you definitely put the work in, I think, to achieve that. No, I'm interested in looking forward. We've got a lot going on. We got, of course, especially fulfillment. I'm sure you've got some fun challenges happening in this new year. What's on your mind? What are the challenges going into 2025 that you're seeing that you're excited to work through with your team at LVK?
2025 is going to be a very exciting year because at LVK, this will be the first year that it's been the LVK brand for 12 straight months since we just launched the rebrand in August. So that's really exciting, getting to own that, get to do the shows, get to go out there and really be excited and proud of what we've built. And then it's back to business in the sense of we're profitable. Every client we sign is a profitable client. We go very deep with them, 5 to 7. So again, it's more about incremental, steady growth for us on a day-to-day basis. Like if you met anyone on the team, Grace, like you would be like, wow, they just show up every day and do the little bits every day. And that's fantastic. It motivates me. It's exciting. And we don't ever want to get caught up in the, there's a lot going on with de minimis right now and people flooding in from, business flooding in from Canada or Mexico, worried about, the changes that are happening in real time. We take a step back and we say, okay, we don't want to take any fly by night, anything that's too quick, because we think in 3, 5, 10 years. So it's also about the discipline. 2025 to me is about discipline and just keeping growing incrementally and sustainably. It's really important because it's just it's so easy to just want to say like, oh my gosh, let's just sign up everyone really quick. And then service levels would go down. So it's a steady discipline. So that's my word for 2025. You drew it out of me, but it'll be about discipline.
Well, I'm going to take it with me too, because there's goals I've set, and I think that's the energy I'm feeling in 25, right? Is this, if the market is coming back, how are we approaching it? How are we being strategic, right? And getting through that as a whole. And I think it's a perfect way to wrap this is for everyone in the audience, stay disciplined, get with your team, make those goals and look back at those, right? Every decision you make and make sure you're on that track. And Maggie, I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with all of us today, and I appreciate you as another woman in this industry leading the charge.
Thank you so much, Grace. It was a lot of fun, and have a great 2025.
Thank you. And everyone enjoy the rest of the summit today.